Yeah, mantra rock dance at where?
San Francisco, the Avalon Ballroom.
The Avalon Ballroom. So we're gonna read about that tonight. Yeah, Avalon Ballroom. That's gonna be the topic of discussion. Avalon Ballroom. So first we'll chant the I did when I came a few days ago. It's really spectacular. It's really wonderful. Yeah, it's very nice.
It's almost first class too.
Mhm. Congratulations to everyone here for your collective prayers. First of all, it takes prayer, right? That desire to see the Lord have an expanded temple and expanded facility for the congregation. So it's prayers first, then it's desire, hard work, and sacrifice. So obviously all of those are going on. And we took a tour yesterday, all the way through the whole structure, and it's certainly a very significant improvement. It's fantastic. It's going to be wonderful. So thank you all for your efforts to make that happen. It's very inspiring. This year, just following the 50th anniversary, or some say it's still going on. Some people are measuring the time from when Prabhupada established ISKCON for one more year. So you got a few more months if you want to consider that still part of the 50th anniversary. But I wanted to talk about the 50th anniversary a little bit. We know Prabhupada established ISKCON in New York City in 1966. And remember the date?
No, July 7th.
13th. July. So 50 years, and over the last year there was many significant events. There was a big event in the UK. There was at the European Parliament. They had a big event celebrating the 50th anniversary. Of course, the kickoff was in Calcutta, where they rented that huge stadium and filled it up twice, honoring Prabhupada's departure for the West. There was a new film that's been just released a few weeks ago, Joy of Devotion, a beautiful 80-minute film. We'll have to make some arrangements to show that here for everybody. And of course, Yadavar Prabhu and Vishaka, they're finishing their film in the next few months about the life of Srila Prabhupada. Now there's a new magazine produced honoring the 50th anniversary. I'm not sure we have those here. I haven't seen any around. We haven't? Okay. Nobody's seen them.
No?
Maybe you have one, I have one. We'll have to figure something out. There are still some available, so we'll get some of those. Of course, different special campaigns, 50 books, 50 years. It's a significant thing. Yogeshwar Prabhu released his new book on Swami in a Strange Land. Anybody read that book? Very nice one. Very inspiring. Beautiful book. So, a lot of wonderful events went on. And it's important to mark the 50th anniversary because this is the time when Krishna arranged for his representative, pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, to come and teach and establish Krishna consciousness around the world. And we look back at how much was accomplished within that 50-year period of time. Because sometimes we may think, okay, you know, we have this temple in Philadelphia, or we have the temple in Atlanta. Balabadra's based in Atlanta, or I'm based in Washington. We have a temple in Washington, D.C. But we don't necessarily remember that actually we have over 600 temples, these kind of temples, by Prabhupada's grace and inspiration. And we know there's some cities, like go downtown, you can get some vegetarian Philadelphia cheesesteaks.
Oh, God, please keep it down.
So we have that here, but there's also 110 ISKCON-related Govindas, Higher Taste, Gaurangas, different Dalas, Kalachanjis, wonderful, inspiring vegetarian, prashad vegetarian restaurants all around the world. I mean, that's in 50 years, that's pretty significant achievement. And we know that Prabhupada brought the concept of distributing prashad, and not just a little bit of prashad, mass prashad. And in just 50 years, over 3 billion servings of prashad. Through the Sunday feast, vegetarian cooking classes, Food for Life, other Hare Krishna food relief projects. That's a lot of sanctified food. And how many books? Anybody remember what the number was? As of the beginning, well, as of like last September when we put that magazine together, we had to get all these numbers. And it's more than that now. Anybody remember what the number was then?
It's more than half a billion. It's more.
Yes, it was 516 million books and magazines. And now it's probably, I don't know how many more, maybe near 550, I'm not sure, but more than 516. We estimate about minimum 9 million people. Before 1965, there were no ISKCON temples in the West, there were no Christian temples. Outside of India, there were no Christian temples. So today we estimate conservatively, about 9 or 10 million people conservatively worship at the temples. Not just come to the temples, but worship at the temples. In 50 years, I mean, that's, again, a significant thing. 65 farms and eco-villages around the world. You may have heard, if you read ISKCON News, if you don't, it's a good place to check in with. News.iskcon.org. If you look there, you would have seen the story just last week that the Govardhan eco-village outside of Mumbai was given a very special prestigious award from the United Nations, from the Eco-Tourism Special Award. They beat out something like 120, 130 other competitors, 55 countries. It's a big deal. It's a very, very big deal. It's a beautiful place. So again, inspired by Srila Prabhupada, carried out by Prabhupada's disciples, grand disciples, etc. And, how many festivals do we think there are? Hare Krishna ISKCON festivals in an annual year? We're thinking like 6,000. That's the number we came up. You know, Rath Yatras, Janmashtami's, Gorpurnimas all around the world. That's a lot of special events. That's a lot of good times for people to have and get spiritually purified. So a lot of very important things. And it all started just 50 years ago. So ISKCON had its 50th anniversary, so now we're going to see a whole series of other related 50th anniversaries, like New Vrindavan's having their 50th anniversary. I think in 1968 they were founded. So they're getting geared up. I was on a conference call this morning. So they're planning, they're going to make a special film about New Vrindavan. They're doing an archive project. They're doing all kinds of things, gearing up for that 50th anniversary of New Vrindavan. And then this year is the 50th anniversary of Rath Yatras, 1967. So it's the 50th anniversary of the first Rath Yatra in the Western world. So there's going to be all kinds of... When did Prabhupada visit here? Do we know what the year?
75.
75. So we got a few years to compare to now.
65 also.
Oh, yeah, with Philadelphia. the city.
Philadelphia itself.
He came in... that's when he was coming
After
in.
Butler, he
No,
came
he
in.
came from Butler.
Just after Butler.
It's a little different from the book.
Okay.
The Swamiji book is
Okay.
wrong in this
Okay.
mistake.
There's
He
a
comes
few
from
different versions.
76. He came in 76 and he stopped in Philadelphia on his way back from Butler to New York.
Okay. So before you resettled to New York,
Yes.
he met a professor here, didn't he? Brown? Yeah, met a professor. Yeah. Wow. So he set foot in Boston, then he set foot in New York, got on the bus, went to Butler, and then from there came to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, lots of big 50th anniversaries. So, tonight happens to be, as I mentioned earlier, just now, a little later on the West Coast, the famous Mantra Rock dance.
That's a beautiful picture.
Were you there?
No, but
You wouldn't fit in,
picture,
bro.
always- No, well, when you look at the picture.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's
It
amazing.
feels like.
So I'm going to read, there's different accounts of it. Mukunda Maharaj has a nice account in his biography of his experiences in the movement in the early days. And also in some other places, but the Leelamrita was handy. So this is also one nice version of that account. So it's funny, wherever you go in the Hare Krishna movement, the same microphone's always there. The same microphone. They even look different, but they all function exactly the same.
That's not funny.
Either that or somebody spreads the word, hey, Anuttama was coming, give him the broken microphone. Well, Butler's, among other things, a professional musician, so he knows how to do these things maybe better. Okay. So I wanted to read from this and then share a few thoughts on it, about the historical significance. And, we see that Prabhupada was such a unique and amazing personality, and as time goes by, that's only going to be revealed more and more. And even if you talk with disciples that were with Prabhupada during his physical presence here, oftentimes they'll say, somebody maybe was in New York when he visited New York, but they didn't get to go to LA. Or somebody else was in LA, maybe he was Prabhupada's secretary for like 2 or 3 months, but then they kind of stayed behind, and then he went on to India or something else. So nobody really had the chance to associate with Prabhupada as much as we all do now, because there's all the lectures are there, all the histories are there, all the biographies, so we can follow Prabhupada from the beginning to the end, hear from different people's perspectives, different people remember different pastimes, so that opportunity to associate with Prabhupada is there even more so. And it's important then because he's our founder Acharya, he's the one that brought the tradition from India, and he sets the mood for all of us. He sets, the whole, and of course bringing from what was there given by the 6 Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya, but he's bringing the process forward and making it alive in the modern context and around the world. So reading things like how this sannyasi comes from Vrindavan and lands in New York and sets up shop in Butler, Pennsylvania, forever glorifying. The name Pennsylvania is going to, for the next 10,000 years, people will be glorifying the name Pennsylvania. So you're very fortunate to be Pennsylvania residents. So, and then within a short period of time, he's in a rock concert, as we're going to hear about, with a lot of, interesting people. Is an important part of our history, because it's a piece of the tone that he set. In this film that's just been released, Joy of Devotion, there's an interview with a lot of very big scholars of Vaishnavism. Frank Clooney, who's a big scholar of Hinduism at Harvard University, and Dr. Thomas Hopkins, who's the first scholar that ever met Prabhupada, is interviewed, and a bunch of other people. And one of the comments they make is about how Prabhupada was simultaneously so strict, yet so flexible. So this is an example of that. So read some of this and then share some thoughts, okay? So it's a little too long to read the whole section, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, and hopefully the flow will be okay. Though some of the New York disciples, so Prabhupada has some disciples in New York, and then he's come to the West Coast. So he's got his East Coast group, and then he's got his West Coast group. And as often happens, there's some differences of opinion on how things should be done. That never happens today. We all agree on everything is complete clarity. But in these days, apparently there was some difference of opinion. So, though some of the New York disciples had objected, Srila Prabhupada was still scheduled for the mantra rock dance at the Avalon Ballroom. It wasn't proper, they had said, for the devotees out in San Francisco to ask their spiritual master to go to such a place. It would mean amplified guitars, pounding drums, wild light shows, and hundreds of drugged hippies. How could his pure message be heard in such a place? But in San Francisco, Mukunda and others had been working on the mantra rock dance for months. It would draw thousands of young people, and the San Francisco Radha Krishna temple stood to make thousands of dollars, which in those days was a lot of money, for the Hare Krishna movement especially. So although his young New York disciples, although among his New York disciples, Srila Prabhupada expressed uncertainty, he now said that nothing to deter the enthusiasm of his San Francisco followers. Srila Prabhupada knew that he would not compromise himself. He would go, he would chant, and he would leave. The important thing was to spread the chanting of Hare Krishna. If thousands of young people gathered to hear rock music could be engaged in hearing the chanting of the Lord's names, then what was the harm? As a preacher, Prabhupada was prepared to go anywhere to spread Krishna consciousness. Since chanting Hare Krishna was absolute, one who heard and chanted the names of Krishna, anyone, anywhere, any condition, could be saved from falling to the lower species in their next life. These young hippies wanted something spiritual, but they had no direction. They were confused, accepting hallucinations as spiritual visions. But they were seeking genuine spiritual life, just like many of the young people on the Lower East Side who now become disciples and friends and followers. Prabhupada decided he would go. His disciples wanted him to, and he was their servant and the servant of Lord Chaitanya. On the night of the mantra rock dance, while the stage crew set up equipment and tested the sound system, and Ben and Roger, some people that did light shows, organized their light show upstairs, Mukunda and others collected tickets at the door. So it gives you an idea what the scene was, okay? So they're at the door. People lined up all the way down the street and around the block, waiting for tickets at $2.50 a piece. Gives you an idea how much time went by, right? Attendance would be good, a capacity crowd, and most of the local luminaries were coming. Here's the luminaries. LSD pioneer Timothy Leary arrived and was given a special seat on stage. Swami Kriyananda came, carrying a tambura. A man wearing a top hat and a suit with a silk sash that said San Francisco arrived, claiming to be the mayor. At the door, Mukunda stopped a respectably dressed young man who didn't have a ticket. But then someone tapped Mukunda on the shoulder. Let him in. It's okay. He's Owsley. Anybody know who Owsley was?
He was a sound director and engineer for Grateful Dead, and he also was the engineer of the chemical drug called LSD.
Yes, that only the second part is he given credit for here. Yeah. Mukunda apologized to him and submitted, allowing Augustus Owsley Stanley II, folk hero and famous synthesizer of LSD, to enter without a ticket. So that's the crowd. He's a luminary amongst these hippies. Almost everyone who came wore bright and unusual costumes: tribal robes, Mexican ponchos, Indian kurtas, feathers, and beads. Some hippies brought their own flutes, lutes, gourds, drums, rattles, horns, and guitars. The Hells Angels, dirty-haired, wearing jeans, boots, and denim jackets, and accompanied by their Hells Angels women, made their entrance carrying chains, smoking cigarettes, and displaying their regalia of German helmets, the ones with the points on them, right? Emblazoned emblems and so on. Everything but their motorcycles, which they had parked outside. In other versions, it's explained that they actually asked the Hells Angels to be in charge of security, because they were afraid if they didn't, they might come in and trash the place themselves. So they made them in charge of security. Again, it's like, how do you do something spiritual in that kind of environment? Would we want to march in there and tell people, well, there's 4 regular principles. Okay. A little after 8 o'clock, Moby Grape took the stage, which in those days, I think they were the one band that wasn't well known. Malati had booked them at the last minute. The other devotees said, well, who are these young kids? But they ended up being a big name band in the future. With heavy electric guitars, electric bass, and 2 drummers, they launched into their first number. The large speakers shook the ballroom with their vibration, and a roar of approval came from the audience. Around 9:30, so that's 8 o'clock they start. Around 9:30, Prabhupada left his Frederick Street apartment and got into the back of Harvey's Cadillac. So the devotee had an old Cadillac that he was chauffeuring Prabhupada around it. He was dressed in his usual saffron robes, and around his neck he wore a garland of gardenias, whose sweet aroma filled the car. On the way to the Avalon, he talked about the need to open more centers. At 10 o'clock, Prabhupada walked up the stairs of the Avalon, followed by Kirtanananda and Ranchor. As he entered the ballroom, devotees blew conch shells. Someone began a drum roll, and the crowd parted down the aisle. All the way from the entrance to the stage, opening the path for him to walk with his head held high, Prabhupada seemed to float by as he walked through the strange milieu, making his way across the ballroom to the stage. Suddenly, the light show changed. Imagine this big auditorium. Pictures of Krishna and his pastimes flashed onto the wall. Krishna and Arjuna riding together on Arjuna's chariot. Krishna eating butter. Krishna subduing the whirlwind demon. Krishna playing the flute. As Prabhupada walked through the crowd, everyone stood applauding and cheering. So just, appreciating as here you go to the Lord, that is devotional service. He climbed the stairs and seated himself softly on a waiting cushion. The crowd quieted. What happened next? Anybody know what happened next? Did he chant? Did he take up his cartels and chant? What happened next? Did he give a lecture? What happened? Very important point. Looking over at Allen Ginsberg, Prabhupada said, you can speak something about the mantra. Now, Allen Ginsberg was not a sannyasi. He was not a Vaishnava. He was not coming from Vrindavan. He was not an advocate of any of the four regulated principles. And Prabhupada told him, you speak. Allen began to tell of his understanding and experience with the Hare Krishna mantra. He told how Swamiji had opened a storefront on 2nd Avenue and chanted Hare Krishna in Tompkins Square Park in New York. And he invited everyone to the Frederick Street Temple. Putting his own unique spin on the philosophy, he said, I especially recommend the early morning kirtans for those who, coming down from LSD, want to stabilize their consciousness on re-entry. You know, Prabhupada's sitting there. He asked him to speak. He didn't give him a script, so he knew he... Prabhupada then spoke, giving a brief history of the mantra. Then he looked over again at Allen and said, you may chant. So first Allen Ginsberg speaks, then he has him chant. Allen began playing his harmonium and chanting into the microphone, singing the tune he had brought from India. Gradually, more and more people in the audience caught on and began chanting. As the kirtan continued and the audience got increasingly enthusiastic, musicians from the various bands came on stage to join in Avalon Ballroom, I believe about 50 years ago tonight. Ranchor, a fair drummer, began playing Moby Grape's drums. Some of the bass and other guitar players joined in. This during the kirtan. So the musicians are coming on stage. As the devotees and a large group of hippies mounted the stage, the multicolored oil slicks pulsed. I'm not sure what that means. The lights? Oil slicks. Okay. And the halls and the balls bounced back and forth to the beat of the mantra, now projected onto the wall. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the mantra's up on the wall, part of the lecture. As the chanting spread throughout the hall, some of the hippies got to their feet, held hands, and danced. Allen Ginsberg, quote, we sang Hare Krishna all evening. It was absolutely great, an open thing. It was the height of the Haight-Ashbury hippie spiritual enthusiasm. It was the first time there had been a music scene in San Francisco where everybody could be part of it and participate. Everyone could sing and dance rather than listen to other people sing and dance. Janaki, devotee. People didn't know what they were chanting for, but to see that many people chanting, even though most of them were intoxicated, made Swamiji very happy. He loved to see people chanting. Someone placed a microphone before Srila Prabhupada, and his voice resounded strongly over the powerful sound system. The tempo quickened. Srila Prabhupada was perspiring profusely. Kirtananda insisted that the kirtan stop. Swamiji was too old for this, he said. It might be harmful. But the chanting continued faster and faster until the words of the mantra finally became indistinguishable amidst the amplified music and the chorus of thousands of voices. Wow. Then suddenly it ended. So apparently it went on for an hour or so. Ginsberg says all evening. All that could be heard was the loud hum of the amplifiers and Srila Prabhupada's voice ringing out, offering obeisances to his spiritual master. Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivraja Acharya Asko Tarapati Shrimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Yeah.
All glories to the seven devotees. Prabhupada made his way off stage. Here's another side of Prabhupada's personality coming out. Listen closely. Through the heavy smoke and the crowds down the front stairs, with Kirtananda and Ranchor close behind him. Allen then announced the next rock group. As Swamiji left the ballroom and the appreciative crowd behind, he commented, "This is no place for a brahmachari." So, just a few reflections. I think, we all should be thinking about, especially the 50th anniversary just ended and going into the extended 50th anniversary in the next 50 years, about Prabhupada and his nature. Because we're all Prabhupada Nugas. We're all followers of Srila Prabhupada. He's our founder Acharya. He's the preeminent Siksha Guru for members of our community, which means he's the preeminent person giving instruction. We may have so many different people give us instruction. Sometimes, the parents instruct the children, the husband or the wife instruct each other, hopefully happily. And, the president or managers instruct devotees, department heads instruct different people, senior people instruct other people. The Prabhupada is, and we have a Diksha Guru, and we take initiation from a Diksha Guru. I may have one Diksha Guru, you may have another Diksha Guru, but for all of us, Prabhupada is the preeminent instructing spiritual master. Not just by his words, but also his deeds, his activities. So when we hear these pastimes of Prabhupada, we should also be thinking, trying to understand the meaning behind it, the purpose behind it, and Prabhupada's mood behind it. So here we see, for one thing, Prabhupada's ready and willing to go anywhere. I would have a hard time at my advanced age of going to a rock concert like this in the Avalon Ballroom. I would kind of be uncomfortable there. Prabhupada was, again, just came from India. This is a whole new culture. He had a little time in New York. He had some idea what hippies were. You've probably seen that one interview. They asked him, a reporter asked, well, what would happen if the Christian consciousness spreads? And he says, things will be very happy and things will be much better. And then he kind of smiles and says, there will be no more hippies. And then the reporter asked him, well, what is a hippie? And Prabhupada smiles again and says, you know better than I do. So, Prabhupada's mood, he was willing to go everywhere and anywhere, like it describes, he was pleased to see people chant Hare Krishna. So if we are if we are friends of Prabhupada, if we are supporters of Prabhupada, appreciators of Prabhupada, followers of Prabhupada, disciples of Prabhupada, we should also try to develop this mood, to be willing to do whatever is necessary to try and help people. Not that we think, well, I like being with devotees, or I like being with this group of people, or I like that group of people. We should build this mood that if I'm a follower of Prabhupada, my heart has to open and be willing and enthusiastic to be with anyone, anywhere, to try to help them, uplift them with Christian consciousness. The second thing we see here, it was a room full of drugged hippies, young, bewildered people. Prabhupada didn't see them as young, bewildered people, sinful, foolish, forgotten. He saw them as spirit souls. First instruction of Bhagavad Gita, we're not the body. It's not just a theory, it's a philosophy. It's the way we're meant to live and interact with people. So Prabhupada is perfectly manifesting that he was seeing everyone. These were all devotees of God. They're eternal spiritual beings. They've lost their connection with Krishna. And he's there to try to help them regain it. So that he's willing to go anywhere, that his vision is seen everyone as devotees of Krishna. And then his flexibility. He was open. New York said, don't go. San Francisco, wait, well, what's the better opportunity? And even among his disciples at that time, there was some difference of opinion. But he was open. Let's try to figure out the best thing. And he was ready to take a little chance. And at the same time, very strict, but willing to go to this mantra rock dance. And even like we read things, like somebody could say, well, excuse me, Prabhupada, it says in the Shastra that milk touched by the mouth of a serpent is poisonous, specifically in reference to mantras and to other things. So here's a person, Mr. Ginsburg, may God rest in peace, may he rest in peace. He certainly got tremendous benefits, certainly Prabhupada. But he wasn't practicing Krishna consciousness. He wasn't a Vaishnava. His, according to our principles, he was a pretty degraded lifestyle. But Prabhupada had him speak. And not just speak, Prabhupada had him chant. So why? Why did Prabhupada do that? It's the first time Prabhupada had met all these young people. They kind of sold out this event, Swami Prabhupada's coming. But it was the Swami, but a lot of it was because it was a rock concert. Right? Prabhupada knew that. So if he speaks, maybe they'll pay some attention to him, maybe they won't so much. But Allen Ginsberg, the famed beat poet, he was a big celebrity to those people. So understanding that, Prabhupada said, no, you speak, because they'll pay attention to him, maybe more than they would have to Prabhupada. So he had him speak. And then he had him lead the chanting. Because maybe these people, in their mindset, they'll think, well, if Allen Ginsberg's doing this mantra, it's okay. Some elderly person, Swami, maybe I won't be so open to it. Allen Ginsberg's chant's great. And then Prabhupada began to chant. So again, this flexibility based on his vision and his compassion. So, looking over our 50th anniversary and beyond, it's so important that we should take some time. We are just practically the second and third generation. If we call Prabhupada the first generation, he was only one in that generation, of spreading Krishna consciousness, Vaishnava tradition, bhakti over around the world. If he was first, we're just the second and third generations now. So his disciples are like the second, those disciples of those disciples are the third. There's some young people coming up. So it's very, very early on. And what to speak of in 100, 150 years, so many leaders of the Krishna conscious movement will come and go, and there's going to be different moods, and there's going to be different ideas, and there's going to be different opinions, and some are going to gel and some aren't. Keys that we have to look back to say what's going to pull it all together. So it's important in each of us. We shouldn't think, I'll give an example. This is before we really were understanding more what it means to the disciplic succession. But this is something, we all have kind of pivotal experience in our lives that we take as kind of important events that guide us to something or avoid something. I was in a temple one time, years ago. This is probably, was pre-86, so it was probably maybe 1980, 80, early 80s. And there was a kirtan going on. It was actually Prabhupada's Guru Puja. And they finished, the kirtan was going on and they were chanting Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Of course, this would never happen today, but it's important to know the history. And one of the disciples, who was a disciple of one of Prabhupada's disciples, so Prabhupada's his, grandfather Guru, at a certain point he took the mic from the devotee that was chanting Jai Prabhupada, and began to sing the name of his spiritual master. Now, did he do that because he wanted to offend Prabhupada? Was that his reason? No, I don't think so. It wasn't, because he understood from what he understood so far about philosophy, as a disciple, my duty is to honor my teacher, my guru, my spiritual authority, by chanting his name. But he failed to understand that his spiritual authority was Srila Prabhupada. And that for all of us, our preeminent Siksha Guru, instructing spiritual teacher, for all of us in our Christian conscious movement is Prabhupada. So if that's his position, how important is it for us, whether we're second generation, third, fifth, 25th, 105th, how important is it for us to go right back to Prabhupada? Just like when there's issues come up in the United States, and there's serious disagreements, which we may be entering that era now, who knows. What do they do? They go back to the founders, they go back to the Constitution, and they check, hey, where are we really supposed to be going here? So in a similar way, we should all individually take the time to study Prabhupada's life and to hear about these things, and not just in the sense of, okay, this is some Leela, this is an interest that happened before, but if Prabhupada was here today, how would he apply those same principles to what we're doing, whatever our particular situation is here? Just like Prabhupada wrote his 7 purposes of ISKCON, very important. It's a fundamental document for us. And his first principle was to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large. It doesn't say to whimsically propagate. It doesn't say to propagate knowledge of something other than spiritual. It doesn't say to propagate spiritual knowledge to people who are Prabhupada's direct disciples. It doesn't say to propagate spiritual knowledge to people who come from Vaishnava families. It doesn't say propagate spiritual knowledge to people that are of Indian origin. It doesn't say to propagate spiritual knowledge to people who are pious, even. It doesn't say to propagate spiritual knowledge to people that don't offend Krishna, or that, don't take drugs. The Prabhupada went like the heart of, as they say, he went in the belly of the beast of materialistic life to give people Krishna consciousness. So, of course, we can't imitate Prabhupada, but we can follow his footsteps. We can have that similar mood. So Prabhupada gave us this vision, the Bhagavatam vision, that the world is misdirected. It really is, and we see, it kind of goes up and down in terms of piety and interest in spiritual practice, but overall it's very much misdirected. And we can see today, at this current time, even compared to mid-1960s, there's so much technology out there. There's so much information out there. People talk about complete information overload. And in so many ways, people say we've advanced so much, even in the last 50 years, and certainly in the last 100 years, and certainly the last 200 years. And that's true. There's tremendous advances. You know, like if you fall out of a tree these days, you don't necessarily walk around with a handicapped arm for the rest of your life. They know how to fix it. And that's a wonderful thing. I got like a little glaucoma coming on. I don't know what they did 100 years ago. I think you just went blind. So now, you know, they got some drops that supposedly work. And, you know, they do a little laser treatment. So many examples, medical sciences, different sciences. These are great things. Prabhupada flew in airplanes. Jets, he used them in Krishna service. He always talked about how we used microphones. So we don't deny all these things. At the same time, people will tend to say, by our technological advancement, we're solving the problems of life. But we go back and say, hey, in the 60s, the manifestation of that lack of happiness was hippies. In America, at least in other places, all these frustrated young people who just gave up, left their fathers, left their mothers, left their homes, and just experimented with drugs and different kind of lifestyles because they weren't happy, they were frustrated. So people say, well, you know, there's no hippies today, we're making progress. No. The same frustration. Today it's not hippies, today it's angry voters. People, you know, ask people, how you doing? Well, I'm angry. Doesn't matter which side you're on, I'm angry. I'm dissolute. I don't like any of them. Right? That was the main talk before the election. We don't like any of them. But the one thing I know is I'm angry. And all around the world, it's a huge thing. There's this rise in kind of ultra-nationalism. It comes and goes every few decades around the world. And usually it doesn't lead to very good things. You don't know, but usually it doesn't. And fear of the other, is completely contrary to spiritual principles. Krishna starts out the Bhagavad Gita, you're not that body, Arjuna, and don't see in terms of friends and enemies. That's his first teaching. There's more talk about friends and enemies today, around the world, not just here, around the world. You know, it's a very big thing, all the xenophobia, this ethnic group against that ethnic group. So, what is the root cause of that? What was the root cause of the whole hippie movement was frustration. Because they didn't have spiritual satisfaction. The root cause today, it's not this economic policy or this party or that party, much deeper than that. The problem is lack of spiritual understanding. And therefore people are trying to get satisfaction through material things. The hippies were looking in terms of intoxication. These days people, whatever, you know, bigger apartments, bigger houses, you know, things that were there in the past too, more of these material things. So Prabhupada came, tonight we're celebrating in a simple way, noting this 50th anniversary of this mantra rock dance where Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, in the middle of this crazy period of Haight-Ashbury, brought in a little sanity to these young people and explained to them that you're looking for something, but you're not satisfied because you're not material, you're spiritual. And the same message that was there 50 years ago, it's the same message today, it's the same message with Lord Chaitanya, it's the same message with Krishna. And we should try to take that into our hearts and understand that this is the benefit for me, that whatever dissatisfaction I may be experiencing in life, and we have good days and bad days and good weeks and bad weeks and good years and bad years, but overall, it's temporary. So at the very least, it's something that we can't count on. And in our core, we know that's a little scary. It's a little scary to look around and see your friends. I've kind of reached the age now where you start seeing it more real. You start going to a lot more funerals as you get older. And you just, you know, time is there because you know a lot more people that are at that age. So, but this idea that Prabhupada came to spread, that we need to connect with God, and he presented this mantra to the hippies and to the people of that time and to us. And we're meant to present it to other people that this is a method of purifying ourselves. That at our core, we are spiritual beings. We're not the anxieties of the mind. We're not the different desires of the mind or the frustrations of the mind or the envy we feel or the greed or the dissatisfaction or fear, whatever things that come into us, or even the happiness caused by some temporary good situation. That's not who we are. We're the consciousness within the body. And we're meant to experience a higher taste. A higher taste. And Prabhupada came carrying the same message. And we look back in time, that same message in so many different scriptures around the world, and so many teachers and so many different acharyas. teaching the same thing. Ultimately, we're spiritual beings. We have a connection with the divine source, and when we reawaken that connection, then we're going to experience a higher level of satisfaction. So here we can see the mood of our founder Acharya in honoring him and his many great contributions, including the Avalon Ballroom. We should kind of ask ourselves today and tomorrow and in the future, what are the Avalon Ballrooms that I'm presented with? Where's my Avalon Ballroom? Where's Krishna giving me an opportunity to say, well, I don't think I want to go the extra mile to try to give somebody spiritual life. I'm kind of comfortable. Prabhupada didn't need to do this. Things were okay in New York, and things were fine. San Francisco had a few people. But he saw, no, this is a chance to take it to a different level. So he took a little risk there. And as it's described, Prabhupada was very strict. He didn't compromise. He didn't hang around and ask him, how's the marijuana tonight? He didn't do that. But he took advantage of any and every opportunity to introduce Krishna consciousness, and he took a lot of risks. And some of the risks he took didn't work. There's a few things he tried didn't work out. But he tried something else. The whole League of Devotees in Jhansi didn't work out. Good try. But it didn't work out. So, okay, Krishna is one. Krishna slammed that door shut. Let's try this. He never gave up. So these are some wonderful qualities of Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. It's a good time. It's a good night. It's a good year to meditate on those. Take some time. I would really encourage everybody, if you haven't read the Lila Rita, at least the condensed version, if you haven't read it yet, you haven't really connected with our founder Acharya. And if you haven't read Swami the Strange Land, if you haven't read Mukunda Maharaj's book, wonderful, Miracle on 2nd Avenue, there's so many. There's a beautiful book, it's called When the Sun Rises, about Prabhupada's coming to the UK. There's so many. We try to read as many of those as we can. Connect with Prabhupada. And we'll find ourselves very inspired and very enthused. So I'll stop. There's a few minutes. Any questions or comments? Anybody might have? Maybe in the middle, and then we'll go to the back, and then there's 3 in a row here. Were you yawning? Or you were asking a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go here to the purple shirt, and then to the green shirt, and then the orange shirt. Okay. Yes, just behind you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'm Ed. I'm a recovering hippie. Yeah. It's actually partially the guy you mentioned at the beginning. I just have a few comments. The guy you mentioned at the beginning, Owsley Sten. He was the one who set up the sound system for that night. And the band that I really liked that played there that night was the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And they,
Janis Joplin was also there?
Yeah.
Yep. And in a funny way, that night is part of the reason I'm here. Because the Grateful Dead played that night.
So happy 50th anniversary.
I'll be 50 in April, Lincoln City. That
You have to tell us how those numbers work later. You're 50 in April.
We'll
Anyway, go ahead.
we'll talk later. But that night, the Grateful Dead played. Jerry Garcia was involved in the music that night, and he was one of the leaders of the Dead. He was given the Nrsimha deity that night, and he didn't know who Nrsimha Dev was. The band liked it. He became vegetarian. A couple other guys in the band became vegetarians. That filtered into the Grateful Dead world as the years passed. In the first year of '67, the first album they released, Jerry took a picture of that Nrsimha Dev deity and put it on their album cover.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Anybody
It was
know
on
that?
their very first album cover.
Huh. Didn't know that.
So, and then
Giant Shringaday.
devotees would come to the Grateful
They were kind of into Shringaday Rasa.
Oh, you went?
Yeah. And ghastly Rasa. It's definitely a dead thing.
Just their name though, but their music was very much about like spirituality, love of God to some degree,
That era,
the suffering of the world.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll have to look for that picture of the machine. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, I have a question because you were speaking about Prabhupada and Nuga.
Yeah, he's a follower of Prabhupada. Yeah.
Yeah, because I heard of Rupa Nuga, but I haven't.
Yeah, Rupa Nuga means, like follower of Rupa Goswami. So Prabhupada and Nuga, followers of Prabhupada. What's your name?
My name's Ram Gopal.
Ram, so it could be like Ram Gopal Anugas. Play your cards right. In the future, there'll be a lot of Ram Gopal Anugas. Just lead them down the right path. That's the only request. Yes, Prabhu Krishna.
You mentioned the picture of wedding
spiritual knowledge to society at large.
Propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large. Yeah, Prabhupada's first purpose. Systematically propagate spiritual knowledge.
So, but what happens, amongst preachers, I don't know if it's discrimination, but it's because it's a strategy to preach to certain people who we feel might quickly or, they adapt Krishna consciousness and will be successful. More results attract more results. So that's a kind of strategy that makes us feel that, okay, let me preach to this category of people because we'll get more devotees out of them. And then that way, when you have more devotees, you can do even more preaching stuff. It's not, so is that discrimination?
Oh, that's a nice, I was waiting for the good question to come out of that. Is that discrimination? Well, a couple of things. I think Prabhupada even gave the story, like if you enter a room, Vishnu was this Prabhupada's story, you enter the room and someone's tied up with rope, someone's chained, you're gonna help free the person that's more easier to untie. And then they help you with the other one. So that's like a natural kind of a thing there. It's not discrimination if you don't. As the International Society for Krishna Consciousness grows, we should develop programs following in Prabhupada's footsteps that attract any and every type of person to make some progress in spiritual life. That should be our vision. Now it's natural that we're going to try to share Krishna consciousness with people that are more open to it. Now that's a natural thing. But also we should think, sometimes this is, I go so far as to say, a mistake that's made. Even sometimes I'd say in our home programs, we may invite people to our homes, but I may have some conception of what you need to do to make spiritual advancement. Okay, within 6 months I expect you to be chanting 4 rounds or something. Or within a few months I expect you to be making a commitment to take initiation, and preferably from my spiritual master or something like that. I'd suggest that's very discriminatory in a negative way, because we want to encourage everybody to make as much advancement as they can according to their own pace. I mean, we got a movement, we have grahastas, we've got brahmacharis, we've got sannyasis, these days we've got more vanaprasthas, we've got schools for kids, we've got colleges these days, we've got hospitals. Our whole process is to engage everybody as best they can, give them a chance to make spiritual advancement. So if we discriminate, we say we're only going to have programs for whatever, we're going to have a language class, we're only going to speak Gujarati, we're not going to speak Hindi, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that, That would be to discriminate. But we can't do everything at once. We have to also be practical. We have to be a little strategic sometimes to not misspend our energies. But in our minds, our vision should be how to provide programs for everybody. Like there's all these classrooms upstairs. Like when the new building opens, hopefully more and more people coming. I mean, I think but a nice evolution of our movement would be, you come on a Tuesday night in the first room, it's like a harmonium for beginners class. And then you go in the next room and it's like, mantra meditation for advanced students. And then you go in the next room and it's how to quit smoking with bhakti yoga. And then the next room it's like Bhakti Vaibhava advanced study courses. And the next room it's Mridanga for elementary school kids. Anything and everything to help people come to Krishna. Because Krishna is all attractive. But different people are attracted to different things. Bhakti Tirtha, one of his great teachings, I feel, he said that our teaching, our outreach, preaching is not such a good word in America. Nobody likes to be preached to. Probably use the word, but culturally it's not so attractive here. But our outreach, our sharing with people, whatever we like, he said, should be to take away the obstacles between someone and us, someone and Krishna. So you might meet some people that had such a bad experience with whatever their previous Hindu temple or with their church or this and that. I think the last thing they want to hear about is religion. A lot of people like these don't talk about religion. So we can't try to convince them religion's a good thing. Tell them about spirituality. Understand what's their particular interests and needs and how to present Krishna to them. Some people that come to the temple, they're just totally attracted and just their hearts hearts change just by seeing the deities. And other people, like they've been coming for a year and a half, they still only see flower garlands up there. But they love to chant. And other people love the philosophy. So we have to be able to be flexible like that. That's why we stop around this time and give something that everybody's attracted to, which is the announcements. Oh, I'm sorry. Not to minimize your service. Prashad, okay? Prashad. Okay, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada's Mantra Rock Dance Avalon Ballroom 50th Anniversary Celebration Ki Jai. Taking Prabhupada's mood into our hearts and sharing Krishna consciousness without discrimination, with full compassion and enthusiastic vision. Ki Jai.
There you go.